Great crowd.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great crowd.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Great, great crowd.
I think I had
Okay, are we all here? Lumi Ascension, so nice to see you. Who painted the graphic that you had of the eye? That was beautiful.
I can't remember the name of the artist. Sorry.
Beautiful.
It's nice to see you all blurry. You're all blurry.
I am, that's right, I am all blurry. I can't see myself, but blurry.
What is happening?
Clear again. All clear. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Zen Life Meditation Center. I'm going to give a talk this morning on what are known as the 4 dignities in the Shambhala lineage tradition. This tradition was brought forth by one of my teachers, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. He was a brilliant Tibetan teacher, really, in many ways, brought Tibetan Buddhism to the West. And one of the metaphors that's a teaching in the Shambhala tradition is these 4 dignities, which represent the qualities of us. In the Shambhala tradition, they call it spiritual warrior, qualities of spiritual warrior. We would say that's a bodhisattva. I'm not real fond of the term spiritual warrior anymore. I've seen a lot of New Age takes on this, which kind of make me cringe. So it's not the best word to be using in that thing. But what it implies is that we're talking about the qualities of the bodhisattva and the strength of those qualities to hold your ground, to stand your ground in times when it's often difficult to do that. And so I'm going to be talking about these metaphors, and I painted these 4 images several years ago, and then I wrote blogs on each one. And they're on the wall up there, and when I talk about them, I'll try to share them so you can see them online. But you can also find them on our blog site, on our website as well. So you probably need a little context to how do we get to taking the Bodhisattva vow in the first place? How did we come to be inspired to take such a big and brave vow? And I think many of you have taken this vow or are living it here already. So I think I'm preaching to the choir here, which just makes it easy. So as far as context goes, I think you can come to this vow in so many ways, because human beings are diverse, and you can come to it intuitively. You can have a sense of this aspirational energy in yourself when you're 8 years old, or you're a young man like you. And so, but I think it does help to confirm for yourself the coherence and the validity of the vow and the path of it by having an experience of what we call shunyata and prajna wisdom. These 2 things usually come together as a pair. And if you are familiar with the Heart Sutra, you know that both shunyata and prajna wisdom are spoken of together. They come together pretty much. So we get to that through some point in practice. You take up meditation, and you start to pay attention to your experience, and you come to some point where you realize the identity that you thought you were is not as solid as you thought it was, right? You thought you were somebody, and it turns out that's kind of slippery. And so that's the first kind of intuition or sense and practice of the self that we've constructed is a construct. And then there's further insights that happen with practice that have a lot to do with context and relational awareness with other people. You start to have an awareness of the nature of projections. You're projecting all the time, and through your projections, you're solidifying the self and what you're projecting onto. You're creating this split. So when we come to kind of get what shunyata is, it's not an intellectual thing, but it is a kind of grokking of our experience, in the sense that we've spent our whole life thinking that the world is made up of things. And therefore, we're also, in a way, a kind of a thing, or an object, or a self. And that way of objectifying the world leads to a lot of mischief and turmoil. So this is the beginning to kind of take in what this teaching about shunyata is. It's a profound teaching about the nature of reality, and that reality isn't dualistic. It's not split. There are no things here. You are not a thing. I am not a thing. I might be a blurry thing on that box up there from time to time, but I'm not a thing, and neither are you. But if we don't examine this, we just end up objectifying the world in a way that is not helpful. And so the teaching of shunyata is the beginning of realizing that the world we live in is whole. It's one fabric. It's sacred. I even hesitate to use the word. And in many ways, we've kind of lost the sense of the wholeness in our life, which brings meaning to our lives as well. So shunyata is this, there's a word for this in Tibetan. Being okay with thinglessness is being okay with the spaciousness of reality, where you don't reduce it down to a category or a name or a thing or an object or an identity. There's a word for that in Tibetan, which is zopa. And it's hard to translate, but it kind of means patience. Patience, your ability to bear witness to thinglessness. Yeah, kind of an awkward word. Thinglessness to, what's the other word I wrote down? Boundarylessness. Kind of awkward word. Spaciousness, vastness. Zopa is our capacity, our willingness, our ability to bear witness to this vast thinglessness and be okay with it, and not reduce it down to something, to a thing, to objectify it. So when we have this kind of, I think when you have some sense of what this experience is of vastness, and then there's some inspiration around that, about wanting to practice more, because there's something beautiful about this that is new and fresh, and it's always changing. We can't nail it down. If you try to intellectualize it too much, you kind of kill it. But it's always here. Reality is this way, and we belong here. So prajna comes with this experience of shunyata, in the sense that when you start to realize that the self that you are is not the one you thought you were, the one the self that we have grown up with thinking we are, our personality, our identity, is a construct, and it is the root cause of suffering. In the Buddhist tradition, it's the root cause, because it's based on fear. And it always requires creating reference points, dualistic reference points of this and that, good and bad, me and you, me and the world, right and wrong, left and right, up and down, on and on and on. Those reference points we create with our mind, and our mind has this power to do this. We do it. We're all artists. We're extremely creative. We've created somebody out of nothing. And it's magnificent. Samsara is like monumental. We should appreciate it, that we do this. And so we create these reference points because the idea of not having them is extremely scary. There's nothing to hang on to, and reality is uncertain. We don't know what's coming next, and so it's a very primal reaction to just reach for something that we can hang on to. And once you create these reference points, you create some sense of me in here, somewhere here, central headquarters. You now have to check in with this sense of self-consciousness, this sense of having to perform and look good to all of you. So we have this, we have created a self through these reference points that's based on fear, and having to always play back what we do, which creates an enormous amount of second guessing and hesitation and fear. It's like, when they do a replay in football, and they replay, well, we're doing that all the time in terms of as a way of solidifying our territory, solidifying who we think we are, who we think we should be, or whatever that is. So, prajna wisdom is the discovery. There's another kind of intelligence that doesn't need to do this. You could translate it as non-referential intelligence. It doesn't have anything to do with these reference points. It doesn't have anything to do with me or my agenda. We call it the Dharma sometimes, in some contexts. So the discovery of prajna wisdom is a huge discovery, just like shunyata, and they go together. They confirm and support each other. And when you get inspired by this, it's a way to show up here and be authentic and brave, and sometimes vulnerable, and often wrong. You kind of have, it's a kind of a passion for kind of like, wow, prajna is really powerful. It's going to kick me in the butt every time when I'm getting fishy. When I try to do some shortcut, it's a bullshit meter, and it's going to tell me when I'm bullshitting. And I actually start to, not that I really like it or admire it, but I respect it. And it's sort of like, okay, it's nice to be held accountable in that way. That keeps me upright, keeps me straight. And I'm certainly capable of not being straight or not being upright. So I'm going to, as part of my practice, I'm going to learn as much as I can about this shunyata and about this prajna. I'm going to respect these sutras that have come down through thousands of years of tradition, something like the Heart Sutra, the pith instruction of the Heart Sutra, which is a profound sutra that I can chant here at the Zen Center when we do services. So this all leads to a kind of inspiration and practice. You want to learn more. This is something new. We didn't learn this necessarily growing up in school. We learned other things that a lot of them weren't very helpful. So you open your heart, and we all are wounded, we all suffer, many have had trauma. The world we live in is cruel and unpredictable. and you open your heart. And you break, your heart gets broken. If you open your heart, it's going to get broken. And if you don't open your heart, then you can kind of get by. But if you're doing this practice, you're going to open your heart. If you sit with yourself long enough, you're going to open your heart. And that's, we call this bodhicitta, heart of awakening, awakened heart. It's great strength. And again, our culture has everything upside down. We think that's weakness, to be vulnerable, to have this soft spot, to be like John Wayne, right? It's the whole mythology of our culture now, strong, toxic masculinity. We have such poor models for men, masculinity in the culture. John Wayne is a very poor model for men. So then when you start to say, it's okay to have a soft spot. I don't have to, there's nothing I need to defend anymore. I don't need to create any more territory to support my ego. I could actually let go of creating territory, and that's a profound opening and freedom, liberation and enlightenment in Buddhism. And now, what comes with this is the inspiration to take this vow to save all sentient beings. I could actually take this vow. And the only thing that stops you from taking the vow is some fear that you're not worthy of it. Or that you, again, reduce it down to some kind of finite goal, and then you just say it's hypocritical, which is total misreading of what's going on here. So, in normal logic and physics, 1 + 1 = 2. Always is going to equal 2. But in the Dharma, 1 + 1 doesn't have to equal 2. It can equal anything. Because shunyata is mathematically what we would say is infinite. Mind is infinite. The vow is infinite. So if we don't reduce the vow down to something we measure or calculate, then it's wide open. And it's not about achieving it, it's about taking the vow to heart and living by it. So, any questions about this so far? And then I'm going to start talking about these four metaphors for the Bodhisattva path. Yeah, Adrian. Maybe I like having discussions, so we can have conversations. All right.
Okay, so I'm working really hard. Well, I'm working on the precepts, and I'm wondering. It just occurred to me while you were talking. How does what you're talking about have to do with embodying the precepts, which are profoundly, to me, ethical? So are we constructing the ethics while we're living in the phenomenological world, while we're thinking about, I guess you would say, the non-phenomenological world?
No, I don't think we're constructing ethics. I think ethics arise organically out of being a human being and finding your humanity, your analog experience, which is all embodied. And we live in the digital world, so when we conflate the two, we get confused. And then there's people think they have to be on all the time. And there's a tyranny of the present, which has nothing to do with mindfulness, has everything to do with speed and computers and being disembodied and having fragmented attention and having lots of angst that comes with that and ungroundedness. Part of what happens with practice is that we are getting grounded through meditation, and that groundedness, part of the groundedness is being embodied. It's not verbal. Words. Words are okay. I'm using them now. Hopefully, I'm communicating to you, but I don't know. But the embodiment is always nonverbal. And you try to explain to someone what your meditation is like. You can't do it. I'm going to say, go try it out yourself and see what you discover. And so, so the embodiment is happening through the practice, and then the moral teachings, it's a little old-fashioned word, but really relevant for the moment. I think we are moral beings, we're ethical beings. We're not talking about being moralistic. We're not talking about following a rigid set of rules about how to do things, or creating any kind of duality between ourselves and anybody else. That we're bodhisattvas and other people aren't, or we're Zen practitioners and other people aren't. There's none of that here. Yeah? So there's a sense of being accountable. Prajna wisdom helps us be accountable. Instead of being selfish or self-centered, we start to realize that when we are in service to others, we actually have more joy in our lives, and we feel better. We find meaning in that. That's meaningful. And so the precepts arise organically out of our experience, and I think the beauty of our practice is those precepts have been collected after the fact. It's not like someone sat down and said, here are the precepts, now let's go do them. It happened the other way. There was the experience of a profound integrity of character that came through practice, and then these precepts got organized. Yeah.
So it's like boundarylessness. I mean, I'm trying to put that together with boundarylessness that you're talking about.
But when you're studying the 10 great precepts, boundless vastness, non-duality is one of the three aspects of the precepts. You have the literal way, let's say not killing. You have the literal way of not killing, and that's okay. That's useful. It's literal. It's concrete. Don't kill. But you also have the way of keeping that precept from the point of view of non-duality, which means anything you do dualistic is also breaking that precept. So if you don't honor that vastness, you're actually breaking the precept from that point of view. And then there's the situational ethics, which is the third way of keeping that same precept, which has to do with any given context that you find yourself in. And you may find yourself in a context where there's no good choices, not ideal, and you have to choose something. And it's never either or in Zen. It's always this one and this one and this one. So all three apply, and that's what makes that study of the precepts so rich. Yeah. So the Shunyata and embodiment are right there all along with all the precepts. Okay. Onward. The tiger of meekness. These are all metaphors. Metaphors are lovely because we can talk about them from different ways. Let me see if I can share this on the screen there. I think I can. It's not coming up. It's coming up on my screen.
Can you just share it at the bottom?
Huh?
Do you have the option to share at the bottom of your Zoom? Are you on the Zoom? Yeah, click the share in the middle here. And then I'll show you the option you choose.
Yeah, and then I'm clicking this. Maybe add.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. So this is the tiger of meekness. Meekness is not one of those words we're terribly fond of. It implies weakness, but it's not. It's a sense of having humility and having some awareness that our epistemology is never certain. The way that we come to know or perceive the world could be accurate or it could be quite not accurate. And so we proceed with some caution. Anytime we're dealing with the world, which is complex, any intervention we do in any system is going to have, it's not like a linear cause and effect. It's going to have unintended consequences. And so we intervene a little bit at a time, slowly, cautiously, a little thing. We test something, see, and then we see as there are the consequences. We don't just like go out and do some big dramatic thing because the unintended consequences could be quite large and they could be harmful. We don't know what they're going to be yet. So we're proceeding with some caution is not quite the right word, but with some humility. I think humility and meekness is a good word for it. And the notion of this metaphor is a tiger plants its feet, calmly, slowly, is not, it belongs where it is embodied in its, very comfortable in its embodiment, and it walks, plods along slowly. Again, if we were, as some of you know, I'm very much into complexity theory these days. And one of the teachings in complexity theory is what's called the adjacent possible. Which means
the what?
the adjacent possible. So it means in any system that you're working with, a family, an organization, any business, whatever, when you're trying to intervene in something and you never quite know what's going on, there's many things going on, you want to intervene in a way that is as skillful and allows you to see what the unintended consequences are. So it's kind of like walking, like if you were, let's take the metaphor of enlightenment or reaching the other shore. I'm on this shore, enlightenment is so-called getting to the other shore, but I'm already on the other shore. Nevertheless, there's still the other shore to get to. So how do I get there? Well, I could pick a spot over there and say, I'm going to go there. That would be some kind of idealistic way of approaching it. If I was an engineer, maybe I'd try to construct a bridge, but that would take a long time and it'd probably be very expensive. Yeah, no guarantees it would work. So how am I going to get to the other side then? Well, the traditional way is to use a raft. But maybe I don't have a raft. Okay, so I'm going to look at some stones in the river, and I'm going to step on the first stone where I think I have solid footing. I'm going to put the other foot there, and then when I'm there, there's no unintended consequences. I haven't fallen over and broken my arm yet, which I did a couple of years ago. So I picked the wrong stone to step on, and the unintended consequence was very painful. So you be very careful before you put your full weight on that stone, and you make sure it's solid. And then when you land there, you look for the next stone. That's the adjacent possible. You proceed one stone at a time, slowly, slowly. And if you do that, eventually you get to the other side.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Real quick?
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I supposed to use that?
Yeah, use this.
So I'd like to put this in the context of our daily lives, and seeing that, I'm thinking about the relationship between I and you. I want to pay attention to the fact that you are another human being. I think that's all wrapped up in what you're saying.
Yes.
And I think if we forget that we are dealing with another human being who, in fact, is just like us in their needs and their anxieties and their hopes and their fears, we're lost.
I totally agree. It's all about relationships. Complexity theory is all about personal relationships.
Not just,
Don't forget about complexity,
yeah,
reality.
everything you were talking.
Practice is completely contextual, and you'll notice as we get further into these metaphors, they become more contextual, just like meditation does. You start out with shamatha, and it's not contextual, you're counting your breath. You know what I'm talking about, most of you? One point of attention. That's the initial beginning meditation we talk about here. You get to Vipassana, and now it's open awareness practice, which is completely relational.
I just wanted to say that I love the metaphor of the tiger, because the tiger, not just putting its foot down on the earth, putting its foot down, considerate of the earth, if you will.
Could be.
We all being the earth,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, so at this point, there's still not quite the relational thing in the metaphor. We're starting with some kind of being grounded in our being embodied, being comfortable in our own skin. You have to start with some your own experience as you perceive it, but then that's going to grow and mature as you continue to inquire, and you're soon going to find that your experience includes the experience of other people, and in fact, you cannot actually be who you are without being in relationship to somebody else. Or some other thing, something in the environment, some being. And so the further we go along in the practice, the more contextual and relational it becomes, including with the metaphors, by the way. So you start with the tiger of meekness, plotting just one thing at a time, kind of like one point of attention. Allows you to show up and be here, cut through the speed, proceed slowly. Yeah. And then the next metaphor is the snow line. I'm feeling so great this morning because I didn't sleep last night, but just talking about this, I already feel a little perkier. So the snow line is it's actually a real creature in Tibet, very rare, I think. Matheson wrote about it, but not very common, almost mythological. In the painting, oh, yeah, sorry. So let me do that. Snow line of perkiness, we can, no matter how, even if we didn't get a good night's sleep, we're just a little grumpy or cognitive, not at our optimal best, you can always perk yourself up. You can always uplift yourself. Feeling a little down or discouraged by something, you can uplift yourself. You can do this. And this comes from discipline. And we don't have enough discipline in our culture. And it's not a word we like to hear talked about very much because we don't have a lot of it. And normally, when we think about discipline, we think about something being imposed on us from the outside. So you were, when you grew up, your parents forced you to practice an instrument and you had to play it in the summer when all the kids were out playing and you feel resentful because you couldn't go out and play with the other kids. That's a very negative association we have with discipline. Or in a religion, there's some big poo-boo that says, or some hierarchical organization that says this is what you should do, and you get discipline imposed on you from the outside, which is not fun. It feels, and that's not what we're talking about here. Just like we were talking about with the precepts, the discipline arises from within your own experience, and there's something within you that wants to discipline yourself, because you find that when you do, you have more joy, surprisingly, and you actually can be more spontaneous. So you think spontaneous is just doing whatever you want to do. No, it's not, actually. Improvising is an art. And basically, we're talking about improvising everything. If there's no self here, then We're improvising the self, depending on whatever context we're in moment by moment. And there's no set of rules, or the precepts aren't a set of rules about how to do this. The Bodhisattva path, though, turns out to be a way to show up here and improvise pretty skillfully, because you end up doing what's appropriate in the moment because you're connected to the moment or the person or the relationship or the context. You're reading the context. So perkiness, the perkiness. I just love even saying the word. I perk up when I say the word. Sounds like percolating coffee. So, Prabhupada said there were 2 stages to perking. Let's see, joyful mind and never being dragged down by doubt. Different ways of talking about it. Doubt's not always a bad thing. But there's a way in which we doubt and second guess ourselves, which creates anxiety and starts to unground us. And so, because we have this, already have grounded ourselves through this tiger of meekness, and we are embodied, that doubt doesn't arise because the body doesn't lie. Our body is an open book. And the only problem is when we try to override the wisdom of the body by intervening with something in our head that thinks the body, we're better than the head. And that kind of arrogance never works. So this second stage of Perky is kind of overcoming that way in which we intervene with nature in ways that we shouldn't. Where we start to imagine that we're God, and we're not. So it's said in the teaching here that this stage of the Bodhisattva path overcomes the lower realms. And the lower realms are the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance. So the idea is when you're activating this practice in your life and you're really living it, and the way you do this is not by some belief in it, but again, it's organic and experiential, and it's, the sixth patriarch says, Huineng says, be straightforward. Just be sincere. Be yourself. Trust yourself. It's not complicated. Don't second guess yourself. Don't try to be somebody you aren't. So this perkiness leads to a kind of a capacity to uplift ourselves and to through our discipline to find joy. Real, not just happiness, but joy, because we're in the service of something larger. Our life is in the service of something larger. Saving all sentient beings, that's a pretty large thing to be trying to do. So that leads to the Garuda of outrageousness. Okay, if I can find it. There we go. Garuda of outrageousness. I love this character. This is definitely a mythological bird, said to be in Tibet the king of birds, born full grown out of an egg, and just flies off into the vast open space. It's this outrageous, bold bird that is just unbelievable. Bold. Overcomes all kind of timidity, hesitation. And there's a phrase even in the Heart Sutra. Isn't it in the Heart Sutra that says beyond has something about there's no longer any hesitation? Yeah? You're not second guessing yourself. You're just kind of on the spot. You take your step. You take it carefully enough so that you hope that you don't fall over. But if you do fall over, you do a good job of it, really. You're gonna fail, really, do it. Do it wholeheartedly. Don't be half-hearted about it. Be outrageous. Make mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. Be willing to make mistakes. Be willing to learn from life. And risk failing. So there's this metaphor is about really getting the truth of impermanence, that everything is changing here. There is nothing I can hang on to. I'm going to leave this world with nothing, just like the way I came into it. And life is precious. Let's take full advantage of what we have, not take this for granted. That we're not here forever. We are here for a certain length of time. And we have a Sangha, we have Dharma teachings, we have beautiful, beautiful teachings that are rich and old and have been tested by time, and we have this tradition has been handed down to us. So, wow, yeah, let's make the best of it. Let go. Trust the universe is going to carry you along, and trust the universe. It's kind of trusting something larger here is at work, and I'm a part of it, but it's not all of me. I tell you, I had this experience in the hospital recently when I was, one of the 2 times where my operation it didn't work out. I had to go back to the emergency room, and there was one night I'm just lying in the bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, wide awake. I'm hooked up to the IV. They come in every couple of hours to check the blood, and I just felt like a lab rat. And I'm lying there, there's nothing I can do, there's nowhere I can go, and I get this kind of epiphany that my body is the prairie. My body is the Great Lakes. It's all this bacteria and virus doing stuff, and there's not a lot of me in it. I don't even know where the me is in it. I have I can steward it to some degree, but there's so much that I don't know, I don't control. There are millions of trillions of bacteria and viruses and my organs are doing stuff, and they're measuring, the hospital can measure them, but I'm lying here in the bed, and I am this magnificent ecosystem that is the old growth forest. And if I would just get out of the way and listen to this old growth forest, it'd tell me what I need to do next. And that was an epiphany for me, which has actually been very helpful for me going forward, getting healthy after I came home from all this, because I've been learning that what I hear in the culture is often not helpful, and if I just trust my embodied experience, my body is going to kind of tell me what it needs. If I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't go to sleep like I did this morning, then my body it's not sleepy. So instead of being all anxious about, I'm not getting the perfect sleep, I'm not getting 8 hours sleep, my body's awake, it doesn't want to go to sleep. Well, I get up, read a book, just relax. Maybe my body gets sleepy in 30 minutes, and then I go to sleep. But instead of trying to, from up here, from top down, trying to manage it all, I just my body is telling me what it needs. If I would just listen with respect, my body is part of the planet. I am part of the planet. And yes, I have a brain, I have thoughts, I have emotions, but there are so many ways not only we intervene in nature, in the world out there, but we intervene in our own health in ways that are not necessarily helpful. And instead of just taking a prescription because some authority gave it to you, you might want to listen, is that what I need? Is that benefiting my health or my nutrition, whatever? I don't want to go into food because I'll go down a rabbit hole there. Because I've been very involved with my own nutrition. And the things I thought were true that I learned that most of it's just upside down. So the root of outrageousness is really being, are you brave enough to be yourself? To be yourself without ego, without pretense. And can you stand your ground? Especially in the context of all the pernicious things that are going on in the polycrisis that we find ourselves in, which is happening everywhere. It's happening in the education system, happening in the healthcare system. The pharmaceuticals have no interest in your health. None. They want you to be sick, so you'll take the prescription. So, Bodhisattva path is a way to find our footing in times where things are chaotic, they are changing, and there's a lot of disruption taking place, and you find you can actually stand here where you are and take the next step. You don't have to have a grand plan. You don't have to understand everything that's going on. You just have to be able to take the next step in a way that's grounded and present. And then the last metaphor here is the dragon of inscrutability. Let's see. I had fun painting this one. I had fun painting the last one too. Now, the dragon in Asian culture is always a symbol and a metaphor for vitality, but that's not necessarily the metaphor in Western culture, because who was it? Somebody slayed St. George, did he slay the dragon? Mm-hmm. The dragon is not necessarily a positive archetype in Western culture, but there's many versions of that, right? There's Gnostics, and Mayans have Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, which is a very powerful archetype. So this is the dragon of inscrutability, and this doesn't mean, this word, inscrutable, it's a really interesting word. There's an implication here that the dragon is dynamic and is moving with the seasons, as we are, because we are the dragon. But inscrutability doesn't mean it's tricky or devious. It means it's fearless and it's able to read the context it finds itself in and act appropriately, whether to give life or take life, as we say in Zen. And that, there are times, we have the term also in a Wu Wei, which means no action without action, no action. I'm not sure I'm translating that exactly. It's a Chinese term in Taoism. And there is a time to act, and there is a time to not act. And to be able to have that discernment about what is the fight that you want to have, if you're going to have a fight in the world. What is that? And you better choose it carefully, because you can't fight everything. You don't have the energy. But where are you going to stand your ground and draw a line and say, this no further. I'm not going to and I'm going to stand against something. I'm going to advocate for something. And there is a time and place for that. Timing is what this archetype is all about. when to do it, how to do it. You know this in relationships. You have someone you love and you see them doing something that is causing them suffering, and you need to have a talk with them, and you need to give them some tough love, but there's a time and a place to do that. You don't just blurt it out and say it all at once. You have to pick the right time and place to do that so it's skillful. That's what this archetype is about. Being able to read the context that we're in and know what is the appropriate action in this context. What's it calling for? Being able, and that's improvising. There's no rule for this. So what they always say is if you look at bodhisattvas' behavior from the outside, they always seem to do what's appropriate. And you say, how do they know how they do that? They're improvising skillfully. The bodhisattva vow allows you to show up here in the world and improvise skillfully. And it doesn't mean you're always acting. It doesn't mean you're always passive and not doing anything. It means there's a time and a place to act, and there's a time and a place to wait and let the universe come to you. And that's often something we have a very hard time doing, because when you feel the urgency of something, and there's plenty of things to feel urgent about now, there is a kind of impatience in us that wants to do something out of the sincerest of motives, but it can be completely misplaced because we are reacting to something and we feel with the best of intentions that we have to do it, but we're acting too soon. We're reacting and not being really strategic. Great to have good intentions, but do you want to actually achieve something that you're doing? So, to give you an example, I remember back when I was in the anti-nuclear movement in California, people used to chain themselves to fences. Yeah, okay. But the other side, they have all the lawyers, they have all the lobbyists, they have Henry Kissinger. You got Jane Goodall, who's a terrific human being. And what makes Jane Goodall, am I pronouncing her last name right? What makes her magnificent is her upbringing and her core values and her bodhisattva vow around animals. But Henry Kissinger accomplished more. He changed the world more. Now, you say, I don't like Henry Kissinger. I don't like the way that he actually, strategically, he accomplished more. And what we need, which is almost impossible to imagine, is somebody that has both. And that is almost unimaginable that someone could have both of those qualities within them, the capacity to be strategic politically, and I don't have this, it's not my quality, and to have the heart of Jane Goodall both in the same person. That would be inscrutable. And so we're talking here about having confidence, because you're showing up on the spot. And it's not about being right or wrong, it's about being authentic and reading the moment skillfully, reading the context, seeing the other person. So these are qualities of a bodhisattva. I like them because they're emphasizing the strength of the bodhisattva path, and we often have stereotypes that bodhisattvas are these peaceful beings, which they are. But bodhisattvas can be fierce in the service of. I'll say one last thing. I was saying in the class the other day about coherence. Coherence is a really important term in the philosophy of science. There are certain things in our beliefs that cohere, or theories. Evolution is a theory that coheres, from Darwin, right? It's coherent. Even though there are parts of the theory that are wrong, because we've discovered epigenetics, and we've discovered that DNA can be opened and released through the environment, which Darwin didn't seem to know anything about, so it sort of disproves aspects of evolution, and yet, knowing that, evolution still is coherent, because it's based on facts. And facts matter. On the other hand, if you take creationism, which about 50% of Americans apparently believe in, that the world is 6,000 years old, that is not a coherent belief. That is incoherent. And it matters whether someone is talking about a conspiracy theory or they're talking about a vaccine. And we seem to be all confused about this now, that everything is, any belief you have is okay. No, it's not okay. Some beliefs aren't okay. They don't cohere, they're not coherent. And so we have to find ways of interpreting our experience in a world that's chaotic and a kind of postmodern soup of anarchy and chaos of integrating spirituality and science in a way where we find ways to be coherent, not only biologically and experientially in terms of our being in sync in our body and being embodied, but being coherent in the world about how we talk about things and beliefs and politics and whatever it is. Well, we'll stop there. Maybe we could have some discussion. I think that was enough for one talk. I was starting to rant there. Just had enough mindfulness to stop myself before I go any further. Say something I regret.
Well, we are right at 11 o'clock on the nose. So happy to take any last thoughts, comments, questions. Those of you online, feel free to unmute as well and hop in as you feel moved.
We have time for a question or two?
Sure, yeah.
We could go over 5 minutes. I'm sorry I talked so long. I'm really hoping to have a little bit more discussion.
Sure, Martina.
I'm curious.
I wanted to ask how those images came to you. What inspired you to draw them, like that whole experience of drawing them?
Oh, I referenced Tibetan images, and then I can't really say how I did them. I just, they're all digital images that I paint on a Wacom tablet, and I referenced Tibetan images to some degree, but then I just made them my own. It's hard to say I think art usually comes before language, like poetry, and so it's hard to explain it exactly. I think I won't try. I felt inspired by the metaphors. I feel inspired by the Bodhisattva path, and any way that we can bring it forth that's new and lets us think about it in different ways, I think is worth doing.
On.
Roshi, you talked about trusting the body. And I was curious, how do you know when that it's genuinely from the body versus like your mind trying to trick you or your ego.
Your body's trying to what?
Like if it's your mind kind of tricking you, you know, or it's driven by your ego or something, like how do you know it's authentically from your body?
Well, I think it's part of what happens in practice. There's we were talking about this the other day in a class. It's a different, we say mindfulness is an awareness without judgment. But I would make a distinction between judgment and discernment. Discernment, it has to do with wisdom. And you learn discernment through practicing. And you notice that if you are overriding the body with your head or your ego in some way, it doesn't usually turn out too well. And you learn this by experience. So you learn that when I was selfish in some way, it had consequences in terms of my relationships with other people, and you learn from that, and you say, okay, that I wish I hadn't done it that way. Now I'm going to try to do it different in the future. And so discernment is a way of being able to differentiate what's wholesome and what isn't. And if it's wholesome, then it feels healthy. And I'm just going to go in that direction. I'm going to have the courage to choose that. And if it's not wholesome, and I have a habit, we all have habits that don't serve us very well, then practice is about noticing that's not really wholesome. It's not leading to intimacy in relationships or whatever it is. I'm gonna change that. I have the power to do that. I can actually stop doing that and do this because this works. So you just learn it on the spot. You learn it by your experience. You get feedback. The universe is the best teacher ever. It's giving you feedback all the time. And the Buddha used to say this, if it works, keep doing it. And if it doesn't work, stop. Pretty practical, right? Yeah. So I think the thing that I'm thinking about all the time now in terms of our curriculum is what is wellness on every level? And what does it mean to be well in a world that isn't? How do we promote wellness on all levels, physically, emotionally, spiritually, nutritionally, metabolically, on all levels, in a world where it's not well. And so, as long as the world is not well on some level, I'm not either. And I'm also, I'm not innocent. I'm part of I have blood on my hands. I'm part of this. But I think part of being embodied is you start to get that the body doesn't lie. The body's telling me something there when I'm lying in the bed at 2 o'clock in the morning in the hospital. I say, just let go and relax. We'll go to sleep in a little while. Stop worrying about it. And it's nonverbal. I think you just learn, I think discernment is part of wisdom. You're discerning what's wholesome and what isn't. What is well and what isn't. And then you move in the direction of wellness as best you can. And in terms of Bodhisattva, the wonderful thing about the Bodhisattva energy is Bodhisattva is always trying to move the energy in the direction of something positive. Whatever context a Bodhisattva finds them, they're going to add value. It's a force multiplier, the Dharma, because 1 and 1 doesn't have to equal 2. So it can equal anything. That means the Dharma is a force multiplier. You do not know what seeds you're planting in any situation. So you are doing your best you can to add value in a difficult situation, but not really knowing if it's going to work or not. And you may never know. Or you might know 10 years from now that something worked. But discernment, I think, is the piece that comes with practice. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a lovely Sunday, those of you online. Everyone here in person, please feel free to stay for kinship, to continue the conversation, have some snacks together.
Follow me, take them downstairs.
You know, I'm reading carefully the regular. Yes. You should join some of my substance. I'd like to give some talks. Nice to meet you, Joe.
I think just against the wall.
Hard to get to Christine area.
No, walking. We started in Glasgow. There's this big, I think it's 96-mile. I'm not leaving.
And it's